Hey, everybody, and welcome to A Mighty Blaze's Authors in Conversation. I am your host, Jane Roper, and today we are here with the fabulous Jen Dupee, who is celebrating her debut novel, The Little French Bridal Shop. And she is going to be in conversation with Crystal King, author of Feast of Sorrow and The Chef's Secret. There we go. Gorgeous covers. Oh, very nice. Welcome to you both. So excited to have you here. Welcome to A Mighty Blaze.
Jane, so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to see you both. So I will introduce you both quickly, and then we will get on with the show. Viewers, please let us know if you have questions. Shoot them up there in the chat. And we're going to have some audience participation very soon. So everybody pay attention, please. To begin with, Crystal King is a novelist, culinary enthusiast, and marketing expert. Her writing is fueled by a love of history and a passion for food, language, and the culture of Italy, which, I mean, who isn't, well, not everybody's passionate about those things, but I am. I love them also. Crystal has taught writing, creativity, and social media at UMass Boston, Boston University, Mass College of Art, and Harvard Extension School, and Grub Street. A Pushcart Prize nominated poet and former co-editor of the now defunct online literary arts journal Plum Ruby Review, Crystal received her master's in critical and creative thinking from UMass Boston. Originally from the Pacific Northwest, Crystal has lived in the Boston area for many years. Her first widely praised novel, Feast of Sorrow, was longlisted for the 2017 Center for Fiction First Novel Prize. Epicurious called it upstairs, downstairs drama meets food porn meets historical fiction. I love that. Her second novel, The Chef's Secret, was praised by Booklist as a fascinating immersion into 16th century Italian life, an introduction to the world's first celebrity chef, and a reminder of the power of food to influence a civilization. Awesome. Jennifer Dupee is the eldest of a set of fraternal triplets, which, as a mother of twins, like, blows my mind. Your mother, God love her. I mean, man. She grew up as such. She grew up seeking any quiet corner of the house so that she could read, write, and work on puzzles. Yeah, I don't blame you for that. Jennifer is a graduate of Brown University and an active member of the Grub Street writing community. She was a semifinalist for the 2016 James Jones First Novel Competition and a semifinalist for the 2016 Faulkner Wisdom Competition. She has a lifelong passion for old houses. I believe you live in one. Isn't that correct?
I do. Mm-hmm.
How old is it?
It's 1906. We think it's either 1906 or 1908. So
cool.
Yeah, not totally clear, but yeah.
Right. That's awesome. Ours is 1900. I like old houses too.
I love it. Yeah.
But her passion for old houses inspired Elmhurst, the grand home featured in The Little French Bridal Shop, which was published last month by St. Martin's Press. Little French Bridal Shop was recently chosen as Good Housekeeping Magazine's April 2021 Book of the Month. Booklist calls it a compelling debut that explores grief, love, and finding yourself. New York Times bestselling author Jocelyn Jackson calls it utterly charming and wonderfully infused with heart and whimsy. Jennifer lives just outside Boston with her family and is currently at work on her next two novels. Impressive. Two at once? Are you doing both at the same time, like switching?
No, see, one's really sort of gestating. I've written like a sketch of a first chapter, but the other one I'm really focused on right now.
Cool.
I don't think I could do two at the same time.
Yeah, that would be hard, right? I don't know.
Really?
I guess some people can do it, but
some people can do it.
Yeah, those people are crazy. Okay, well, welcome to you both. Crystal, I'm going to turn it on over to you and let you kick things off.
Great. I want to give a little caveat. I have a couple cats, one of which just had surgery on his little eyelid, and he's like wandering around in a cone. And I saw the door behind me has opened, okay. And the other one tends to be a little vocal. These are the challenges of doing these things at home. So,
if you need to get up and close the door, it's okay. Unless you're wearing like pajama bottoms.
You'll probably manage it, but just to give the heads up that there could be a lot of cat drama. So I want to say that I am so thrilled to be here today to interview somebody who I have worked alongside with for, God, how long has it been, Jen? Like 14 years, maybe.
Something like that. Yeah. Quite
Something
a long time.
crazy. So we met at Grub Street in a novel workshop with one of Grub Street's best instructors, in my opinion, is Lisa Borders. She's been there for a really long time, and we were in a workshop together. And I thought, do you want to come join? There was another woman that I had been with in a workshop as well. We invited Jen along, and it turned out to be like an amazing group. And we have workshopped each other's books through thick and thin. We've gone on retreats, and we're going to talk a little bit about the retreat here in a bit. But I'm just been so excited to see this book come out into the world, because I've seen it in so many incarnations, and to actually see it in print. And when I was looking at when I was reading through the book a little bit, it has even seen some edits since we last looked at it. So it's funny, because I was like, wait a minute, that's different. So it was cool. I'm actually going to read it again soon, so I can go through and get a little bit more of those edits. But really excited about the chance to be sitting here with somebody who's really important to me in my books, and then to talk about this great, super fun, the French Bridal Shop, which you should all run out and get. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this book. Tell me why you wrote it. Why this book? Why now?
Yeah, so the book, books for me often start with images, and in this case, it was kind of two images. When I first started this book, my husband and I had been looking for a house, and we often took walks down this street near we lived called Elmhurst Road. And we admired this historic house there. As Jane mentioned, I've always had a love for historic houses. And when I met my husband, I realized he did as well. And so we were really looking for our historic house. And we admired this house on Elmhurst Road. And in fact, actually, the house went on the market. And we were like, oh my God, it's meant to be. Like, we're going to bid on this house. Guess what? We didn't get the house. But so what I did is I had just started the opening pages of what would become the Little French Bridal Shop, and I named the house in the book Elmhurst, after this house that we had admired on Elmhurst Road. So I'd started the book, and I had this house, and I knew it was in the seaside town. My grandmother lived for many years in the seaside town of Beverly Farms, and so it's a setting that's really deeply ingrained in my psyche. And in fact, I grew up on the North Shore of Boston as well, so I just know that world really well. So I had the house, but I didn't really have the story. Flash forward a couple months, I had treated myself to a writing weekend at the Emerson Inn in Rockport, Massachusetts, another little seaside town where my husband and I got married. And I had just finished breakfast. I was in the dining room, and I was about to settle into some meaningful writing. But I kept finding myself totally distracted by these pheasants that were in the wallpaper. So very large pattern, blue and tan pheasants that are repeating in the wallpaper. And I couldn't stop laughing when I looked at them, and I couldn't stop looking at them. So I began to write the wallpaper into the story. And
So
the
this
story
wallpaper is also not very small, right? It's like,
right.
I remember when you first were telling us about the wallpaper, and I had this image. So you have really cool wallpaper at the house in Biddeford Pool, which we go to for retreats. And that wallpaper is very small. It's basically the Starbucks logo almost.
Mermaid wallpaper.
Mermaid. It's so cool, but they're small. So I don't know, somehow in my head, I had this idea that the pheasants were kind of a repeating pattern that were small, but they're not, they're huge, right?
No, they're not. In fact, so when I started to revise that scene, I realized I hadn't taken a picture of it. So I began to write this wallpaper into the book, and then writers, being obsessive people that we are, we need to know what we're writing about. And I thought, oh my God, I don't have a picture. So I called the inn and I said, can you just snap a picture of the wallpaper, send it to me, I'll be good. And they said, well, they are renovating the room where the wallpaper is, and it's not there, but we have extra rolls of the wallpaper, and if you'd like to come and get it, come and get some. And so I was like, oh my God, in my car, I was at my day job, I'm out the back door, practically faster than anything, and drove up to Rockport. And there was this wallpaper that then sat in my office so that I could use it as my muse when I was writing the book.
It's so big. It's like not little at
And
all.
if you see them all together, they're even more kind of impactful because
Yeah.
it's an interesting choice of wallpaper.
Okay, so you're
Oh, Jane,
there
you're on
and
mute.
you're distracted by the wallpaper.
Yeah. And so I began to write the wallpaper into the book. And indeed, my main character, Larissa, has just arrived home upon the death of her great aunt Ursula. She's in a bit of a funk. She's struggling. She's just broken up with her boyfriend. She's just lost her job. She's struggling with her mother's failing health. And she thinks she perceives this leak behind the wallpaper. And she takes a crowbar to it. Well, actually, before she takes a crowbar to it, she thinks she's going to go downtown and get some glue to fix it. And as she's heading downtown, she wanders by the Little French Bridal Shop, which is on Main Street there, and admires a dress in the window. And now I just said she's broken up with her boyfriend, but she wanders in anyway and thinks, what if I just go in kind of on a whim and try on some dresses just for fun? Like nobody's going to know. Well, by the end of the chapter, she's brought a dress, and soon word spreads all over this small town that she's getting married. And rather do anything to dispel the rumor, she perpetuates it, and you know how
And
that
then
goes.
all sorts of chaos
Small
ensues.
town chaos ensues. Yeah.
So I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but have you ever done that? Like
I
gone
have
into
not,
a
I've been
dress?
asked, not a million times. No, I have never done that. Although, I do have a mischievous side of myself that might, think about something like that. And indeed, for this book, I thought, I had already written that chapter, but I thought, well, what if I did that? Could I just go in and try on dresses?
You
But
didn't go do
I
it for
didn't do it.
research?
Yeah, I wasn't quite bold enough to do it.
Actually, I probably should have known that. You would have told us if you had done that,
Oh, I would have
actually.
told you. Yeah.
We would have had many laughs over that scenario,
Hmm.
actually. Okay, so the relationships in the Little French Bridal Shop are really complex. There's a lot that's happening. Characters realize that the people that they're with may not necessarily be the people that they want to be with or that maybe they should be with. And you explore a lot of the fraught decisions that occur when trying to navigate those sort of really strange relationship waters. And to me, I really thought this book was really about missed chances. And the characters had a chance to do or be with somebody, to do something or be with somebody. And they didn't for whatever reason. And now they're trying to figure out, how do I get that back? And the book explores a lot of different kinds of missed chances and what they characters do to try to recover those. What was going on in your mind when you were trying to figure out how these lives would be entwined?
Yeah, so I kind of knew early on. So Larissa's parents are big figures in the book. Larissa is avoiding her mother's failing health. Her mother's struggling with dementia, and you know, the disease of dementia obviously affects the person who's suffering from it, and is specifically, huge loss of identity. But I wanted to explore the loss of identity that was experienced by the caretaker of somebody who was dealing with dementia, or, indeed just the caretaker of anyone who was, helping to care for an ailing parent. And Larissa's parents have had a long-term love relationship. They have one of these sort of, I'm not going to call it a perfect marriage, but they're sort of just meant for each other and kind of been that way. And it's Larissa herself is almost just, terrified of it, right? Like, is this the example I have to live up to? And so, in the love relationships, I wanted to explore um, the idea that relationships are not perfect, right? And we are flawed human beings, and we do make mistakes. And also this idea of you can really, really love someone, you can really care for someone, and that doesn't mean that it's going to work. And in my own life, that was something, in different relationships that I found really incredibly frustrating at times. Like, kind of banging my head against the wall, like, why can't it work? Why can't it work? Why can't it work? If I try harder, it'll work.
I
And
know that
sometimes
feeling.
it just doesn't work. And then in other moments, so there are two main characters of the book. There's Larissa, the protagonist. It's really her story. But there's also the caretaker of the house, and his name is Jack, and he's struggling in his marriage, so as in his marriage. And Larissa and Jack have known each other for a long time, but they haven't come into each other's orbits until now for some reason. And so I wanted to explore that as well. Like, is there sort of a timing or a serendipity in times when in a love relationship will work and times when it doesn't?
So Larissa herself is also sort of challenging. And she does a lot of things that might feel off-putting to a reader when you first start to get into her character. And she does things that they're sometimes confusing, and she comes across sometimes as not all that likable. But my take on this with Larissa is like, she's in a situation where she's trying to like really unravel her thoughts and her feelings and her emotions. And we as human beings often are unlikable, and we are often confusing. And I thought it was really interesting how you toyed with those types of scenarios for Larissa. What was going on in your mind when you were creating her character?
Yeah, Larissa is a person who is under duress. She is not herself. She is a person who likes to control the environment around her. She's used to sort of playing by the rules. She likes order. She likes control, and she's really having a reaction to her mother's illness and the fact that she can't control it. And so, rather than face it and sort of let herself be vulnerable, she's letting it manifest in ways. And as it manifests, she really acts unlike herself. So she starts with this lie, this sort of ruse that she's getting married. That to be fair, she didn't quite create. The shopkeeper sort of assumed she's getting married, and it sort of snowballs from there.
She didn't correct them, though.
But she doesn't correct it, right? And then she enters into really just more lies, and she's reeling, and she's sort of grasping. She's both reeling and kind of trying to escape this vulnerability of herself and of the people she loves that she doesn't want to see. Yeah.
So I have a whole bunch of other questions, some of which I know the answers for, but like some of which I want to know the nuance of. But I want the audience to help me with something first. And I asked Jane to kind of help me figure this out too. I want people to pick a number between, what do we say, 10 and 280, and put it in the chat. And we're going to pick one of those numbers, and we're going to have Jen read it from that page.
First one. Whoever puts in a number first, you win. Somebody. 10, 9, 8.
You never know what's going to be on that channel, on that page.
5. It's fun. It's a mystery. It's exciting. Pick a number. Anybody. We're going to have to pick one for you. Okay. 89.
89.
89.
Yes.
Wow.
Sharon Carlson Person.
Thank you, Sharon Carlson Person. 89. Okay, let's see.
And Jen does get a chance to say if she's
know.
going to read it or not, because there might be some really terrible spoiler, or it might just be something that maybe should be read alone.
We have backup numbers now, so if that one doesn't work.
No, I can read it. Read it. Let me read it. Cool. So let me set the scene a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
And it's so funny to just come into the middle of your own book and go, where? Now, let me orient myself, right?
I always do that. I'm like, did I write that?
Right. So Larissa and Jack are in the house. She's she's ripped into the wallpaper with the crowbar, and she's created like a giant mess. And so Jack shows up. He thinks he's actually going to quit this job as caretaker, but instead he's pulled into helping with this leak that's in the house. And so they're kind of talking about the house, and they're working on the house, actually. So this is a little farther along, and they've begun renovating parts of the house. "Why are you so into this house?" Larissa had asked him one night as they were finishing dinner, the walls around them newly exposed. "It's like an obsession with you." Jack smiled. "I don't know. Not every guy can work on an old house. It takes patience, care. You have to pry things open, take it slowly." He stood and ran his palm gently down one of the hardwood studs that framed the walls, and then turned to look at her. You have to find out what's hiding behind the walls. Larissa felt the intensity of his gaze. She held it for a moment and then looked away. Her eyes fluttered from one end of the open wall to the other. She hugged her arms protectively around her torso. But aren't you afraid you'll do something wrong? What if you pry too hard? Couldn't you mess everything up? Sure, but that's part of the challenge. You have to use your brain, trust your instincts. I take things slowly, carefully. Notice how she responds. The house will tell you what's going on if you look and listen carefully enough. He returned to his seat and sat back, watching her. Larissa bit her lower lip. Do you ever get tired of it? Jack shook his head. My house, yes. This house, no. How about you? What about me? Don't you love this house as much as I do? Larissa smiled. She felt suddenly the desire to reach out and grab his hand, that same strong hand that had touched the wall stud, but she resisted. She rested her chin on one hand instead. I guess so, but in a different way. There's a comfort here for me. Even with all this work we're doing, the house will largely stay the same. It's formal but predictable, steady. She pointed toward the living room. That picture will always be there. The couch fabric will always be Wedgwood blue. The library ladder will always squeak a little in its track. And there are so many memories here, memories from my relatives, my mother, my father, my great aunt, everyone who's been here before me. I like to think about them here, celebrating birthdays and weddings and anniversaries. But now that they're all gone, it feels sort of sad, like your memories will fade away into the walls to be forgotten. You'll remember, Jack assured her, and you'll get married someday, maybe have some kids, and then you'll fill the house with new memories. Larissa lowered her head and peeked up at him. Will I?
Wow, it's so crazy to hear you read that, because when you're reading and when you know the whole story, there's so many like small things that kind of come into play with the way the characters are interacting with each other, and there's this like there's this an amorous undercurrent in everything you just read, and she's putting her hand on the stud, and like it's very funny to hear you read it. Did you plan some of that symbolism in there, or is it one of those moments like I know that I have these moments where
No,
I'm like
plan it.
oh
I did plan it. And in fact, Crystal, I think that's one of the scenes that you have not read. I think that that was the last set of edits, or that I submitted to my editor. And after this scene, the two of them actually signed their names on the walls.
oh I don't know that scene.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's so cool.
yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. So their names are like underneath all of the things that happen in the house.
Right, exactly. So when they put the sheetrock back on and they seal it all up, their name, it's there, permanently there.
Oh, that's so cool. That is really cool.
You got to do that when you do renovations. You have
Right.
to put, like graffiti on the walls for like generations later to find.
Yeah. Or leave a message or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, put little souvenirs.
That's so awesome. Okay, so as you wrote this book, you had a new child, in that you had a new baby, and then you also had new kids that appeared in your life as you got married, and so you had a whole bunch of like growing kids that had to have, and over the course of a couple of years, this had to have influenced the book in some way because you have children in the book. Can you talk a little bit about maybe how your kids could have influenced how Jack's kids are portrayed?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. So I have three older stepkids. They are 21, 18, and 16 now, but they were, let's say 5 years younger then, or 5 to 7 years younger then. Yeah, so it's maybe 7 or so when I started the book. And I always knew that Jack would have kids, Jack and Holly, his wife, and I wanted the kids to operate a little bit as sort of a bundle in the way that kids do, and I wanted the kids to amplify this idea of identity, um, and I wanted Larissa in a way to be a little bit mystified by them, and so yes, like learning, getting to know my stepkids and learning about them. And there's like a line in the book. So I have two stepsons, and there's a line in the book where Jack is talking about them and saying, shoes. They constantly needed new shoes. And felt like that's what it was like in our household, where it's like, you buy them shoes, you turn around and you're like, oh my God, they need new shoes again. Or, we have to go to this soccer practice and that soccer game. And so I wanted to channel some of that energy. And in addition, Jane mentioned earlier that she's the mother of twins, and I'm a fraternal triplet. She mentioned in the bio, and the boys. Jack has 3 boys, and they're fraternal triplets. And the reason I chose that is because I realized early on that this was one of the themes was a theme of identity, and so Larissa sort of losing her identity and trying to find it again, and Jack in a way too. And I felt like triplets was a really interesting way to amplify that theme of identity. But yet I didn't want them to be identical triplets because I wanted them to be sort of enough alike, but not totally alike. Um, and Jane, just a very quick tangent because I think people find it interesting. You had mentioned, mother twins. Oh my God, I don't know how your mother did it. And in fact, my parents thought that they were having twins until my sister was born. And so I was born first, and my brother was born second. And my father literally said, oh, this is great, a boy and a girl, like one of each, what more could we want? And they're like, well, one more.
One more.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
So they didn't have time to freak out, really. They just had to dive right in.
They had to just dive right in and do it. But you look at pictures of them, and they had help. Family came. They had these 2 wonderful neighborhood girls who were like 14, and they would come over every day after school and help. Mm-hmm. Just having an extra pair of hands is like so much help, right? But you look at pictures of them, and they just look sort of like, what hit us? What happened here? Yeah, I'm talking about a plot twist, exactly.
Yeah, totally. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So you have a couple other things. You were saying one of the things that there are some of the coincidences and things that have occurred around the book. And one of them happened recently, and you were telling us about it. And I thought it was so cool. I want you to tell other people about it. So you have this Rolls Royce in your book, and that Larissa she's a friend. One of the people in the town let her borrow it, and I always thought it was a little interesting that you included a Rolls Royce because they're so unusual. And it turns out one of your readers probably realized why you included it, maybe even before you realized why you included it.
Yeah, so this was crazy. So I exchanged a message with an Instagram viewer, and the way that I kind of came across her was totally random in the first place. So I was doing an Instagram live video last week. A friend of mine watched it. She took a screenshot of the chat, and then she sent it to me later. And in that screenshot was a question from the audience that said, why the 79 Rolls Royce? So it was clear she had read the book. And I don't know what caused me to do this. Like, it was almost predatory, and it's not like me. But she had friended me on Instagram, so I friended her back. And then I sent her a note that said, I wanted a kind of a classic car, but not something so old, like not a super old Rolls Royce, because Larissa takes it out in the snow. So I wanted it to be like conceivable that she could drive it in the snow. And, that was it. I got this response back that said that she lived in Beverly Farms, which is the real town on which my fictional town is based. And indeed, the gas station there in my book is really largely based on the gas station that's in the book. And she said, in the year 2001, my 1979 Rolls Royce sat at the gas station for about 2 weeks. And in addition, my house is like the house on the highest point on West Beach in Beverly Farms. And the house in my book is up a hill on this high point. And also I make a lot of reference to this rose hip called Rosa Rugosa. And she said, and I planted Rosa Rugosa on the beach at West Beach. And so your book resonated with me on all these levels. And I was like, mind blown. Like, are we on the Truman Show? Like, what is this? Like, wow.
You've got subliminal influences,
Yeah.
right?
Did I see that Rolls Royce in 2001? It's my grandmother lived right there. Like,
could be.
So that was a great story. I was
wow.
Yeah.
Old
I mean,
overnight.
and so that the Rolls Royce has like a really interesting part in it. Like she does drive it through the snow, and she's going to see her parents. Now, one of the things that you've got going on in the book is that Larissa's mother has some form of dementia, and I know that I was probably really emotional, and a lot of my feedback surrounding that when we were workshopping it, because both my mothers have Alzheimer's early. My mother's early stage, and my mother-in-law is pretty far along, and it's a horrible thing to watch, and it's a horrible thing to think about and imagine. I bet that there's more than one person watching this that can identify with this in some way. And Larissa runs from this. Well, she takes the Rolls Royce towards it and for a brief moment, but through a lot of the book, she's running from it, which I really understand because it's pretty awful. Why did you decide to include this particular element in the book?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the heart of the book. And yeah, my heart goes out to anybody who's helping to care for or watching somebody struggle with dementia and Alzheimer's. Um, I knew early on with Larissa that she wasn't quite herself, and I knew that something was kind of impacting her. And I felt like, you get sort of a writerly sense of in the back of your brain, like she's struggling with her mother's illness. And this was a state that I recognized, because I had felt a similar state when I was struggling with my own mother was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 22. I had just graduated from college. My parents were divorced, so I sort of ended up being in this very large caretaking role. Um, and it I didn't actually avoid it the way that Larissa does, but I found that when I wasn't kind of there dealing with the caretaking and going to the doctor's visits and going to the surgery and going to, all of these things that are really challenging to cope with, I found myself doing things that were kind of out of character,
Mhm.
and it would just manifest itself in this way of like, I've got to, because I've been holding it together so much, I've now got to like release this energy. And so with Larissa, I felt this impulse. I felt like that's what she was feeling, but I chose dementia as the disease because I realized that she was experiencing this loss of self, as I said earlier, and
Mhm.
dementia was a way to amplify as well that theme of loss of self.
Yeah, it was definitely some of the tougher moments for me, but you
Yeah.
handle it in a really beautiful way. Particularly, there's a dancing scene that was really nice. So you guys
Thank
get
you.
to,
Yeah, Alzheimer's is such an interesting disease in that it really affects your short-term memory, but your long-term memory can still be very much intact, and your procedural memory. So the things that you've done, um, you've done repeatedly, and you've learned how to do over and over again. You can do so if you've learned like things on the piano, you could sit down and play your piece on the piano.
Mhm.
Even if you've driven around the same area often, you know where you're going. But it's really in those really quick short-term moments. And so, but dancing, I learned, is a way that, and music is a way
music.
that
My
many Alzheimer's
mother-in-law
patients,
knows all the
yeah,
songs still.
yeah, and they can kind of return to their former. selves in a way.
Mhm. Yep.
So I wanted to have that moment.
There was that amazing video of a woman with dementia who had been a ballerina, right? Have you guys seen that?
Yeah,
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 they
yeah,
played music from Swan Lake and she just did all the moves and it was just,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Procedural memory. She
yeah.
just has that. That's part of her permanent memory,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
So, yeah.
Um, I'm wondering if we have any questions from the audience. I have not seen any yet, but I have a question actually. I
Yeah.
want to hear about your writing retreats because as someone who also
that was going to be my next question. So
okay, good. Yeah.
let's get
As
in.
someone who does writing retreats with writer friends and we do, it's like our DIY retreat. I'm really curious to hear about yours and what your routine is and how you stay productive and not just hang out and talk all day.
Yeah. Crystal, do you want to take this one?
I can start it, but you have a lot to do with it. So I can talk a little bit about like how we do it, but then Jen, you need to talk about where we do it. Okay,
Okay.
so we're gonna split this question
Okay.
up. So what we do is we usually, we've done it in a couple different seasons. We try for summer, but summer is often tricky to get the place where we stay. And we've also added some new locations into where we have retreats, as different people have in the group there's 4 of us in the group, have started owning other houses. So I'm the lone one that gets to go everywhere else. And what's really fun though is that we pick 4 days. We start on a Thursday and we end on a Sunday. And sometimes one or a couple of us will go up the night before, type of thing. And the whole day is we really structure our time. We actually make sure that we maximize the time that we're there. So we have the days, we usually start like at noon on the Thursday when we arrive. We have a lunch and maybe take a walk down to the beach. And then we work for 4 hours, maybe 5, depending on how we're all feeling. And then we have we have dinner. If we're up in Maine, we'll sometimes try to meet with Mamiv Medwed, who also lives in the area where we go. And for cocktails sometimes, and then we'll have like cheese and crackers and just like very low key on that first day. The second day we get up and have breakfast. We work for 4 hours. We have a lunch down on the beach. We work for another 4 or 5 hours. And sometimes in the evening after we hang out and have dinner, we'll come back and keep working because we just are so in this flow. Then the second and third nights, we usually go out for dinner, or we have like we kind of mix it up. But we have different locations in the houses where we work, and we come together periodically during the day. Anjali Mitterduva, who I think I saw in the chat somewhere.
Yeah, she's here. She was, yeah.
She has a very beautiful book set in medieval India called Faint Promise of Rain, which you should all go out and get to. But she is amazing to watch. Isn't she, Jen? She's like, she like just watching her work is the best, because she will take her whole manuscript and she'll put it out on this big table and rearrange everything. It's pretty amazing. And for us, this is like one of the best weekends of the year for all of us when we go. But it's really special, I think, particularly when we began doing all of the retreats, because of the places that we go. And one of them is in Biddeford Pool, where Jen can tell you about the house, because the house is super awesome.
Yeah, so there's a family house up in Biddeford Pool, Maine, which is about 45 minutes south of Portland, so very southeast Maine, where I grew up growing as a child. And it was built by my great-grandfather. And then I would go up in the summers to visit my great-aunt and uncle. And it's a very small little town where our house is, it's very close to a little beach that Crystal was describing. And it just is very near and dear to my heart. And the house itself, it's not winterized. So when we go up in the fall, there's one heater in the dining room where Anjali spreads out all her papers across the table. And that can do actually a pretty good job of heating the house. But the house is quite big. It's 3 stories, very, quite vertical. And
lots and lots of bedrooms. And
many, many doors and bedrooms. And it's, it was built as a summer house for my great-grandfather. They were from Boston, and so they would go up to Maine in the summers. And so, and Anjali, I think, did a blog post. I think it was our first year there. It might have been our second year there. But if you go to her website, AnjaliMitterduva.com, she's got a really great post about it with some pictures, because there's just some old artifacts to the house that are kind of cool. Like,
I love the door when you walk in, the hallway door. If you open it up, there's all of the marks from all of the children in that family that as they've grown.
The hallway. Yeah. And the dog, actually, there's a dog. For a while, I was like, who's that dog? And it was, like somebody's dog.
Sometimes those details find their way into writing too. I find if I go someplace to write, and there's something cool like that, it'll weave its way in.
Right, exactly. There's like a really old ice maker with like a little crank, where you would to make crushed ice, for cocktails, of course. There's a back set of stairs for maids. There's old rooms that used to be like maids' rooms, and so they're converted to sort of regular bedrooms now. But the back staircase is cool, and
I counted how many people could sleep in an actual bed, and we're talking some of them are like twin beds. There's trundle beds underneath,
yeah.
but like that could actually sleep in a bed, and you could
yeah.
sleep 32 people in a bed in the house.
Oh my God! Wow,
it's
It's
crazy.
like this rambling old summer house,
Yeah.
and Crystal's room especially has a wonderful view of the water. Actually,
It's so
she
cool.
has some pictures of that too.
That sounds fantastic.
It's great.
Wonderful.
But the key to the retreat, really, as Crystal was describing, is our schedule. We have an awesome schedule where we build in really clear writing time, but also really clear downtime.
Yeah.
Just like these 2 hours are going to be lunch and a walk, and
Yep.
no apologies about that.
Right. Yeah.
No guilt over that.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, when you're writing anywhere between 6 and 8 hours a day, it's really hard to feel guilt about having a nice walk over lunch. And
yeah.
So. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys both so much for coming. I love learning about your book, Jen, and hearing about the process and seeing the pheasant. I want to make sure that everyone out there, anyone who's watching, knows where to get your books. Belmont Books in Belmont, Massachusetts is one great place, owned by Kathy and Chris, fabulous friends of Grub Street. Harvard Bookstore, another place. Now, Jen, do you have signed copies at either of those places right now?
I signed all the ones I could at Belmont. I think I plan to check soon to make sure they have signed stock. So yes, they will have signed stock.
All right, awesome, great. And then bookshop.org also has other books, of course. And hope everyone will run out and get them. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks for joining us, Jane. This is great.
Thanks, Jane. This was amazing. Thanks, Crystal. This was
absolutely
next so fun.
Yeah, this is great. Next week, we'll be welcoming Marianne O'Hara. I'm going to be talking with her about her memoir, Little Matches. So I hope everyone can come back for that as well. All righty. Thanks, everybody. So long.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.